bonus edition of the Ground Pass podcast. Today, I bring you an exciting interview with Danny Lee and Stan Smith. Danny Lee is the director of the documentary Who is Stan Smith? And Stan Smith is Stan Smith. This was a very exciting interview. I was really privileged to be able to talk to Danny and Stan about the movie, about the shoe, and everything in between. Also tennis, of course. Nick couldn't be there for this interview, but he did send me some questions, which I got to ask Stan about his tennis career, which was super exciting. The movie Who is Stan Smith is a documentary out now. It's in very limited release. I will put a link in our description of the podcast about where you can find the documentary currently. It's screening in some places, definitely in the States. Not yet internationally, I don't think, but if it is streaming internationally, I'll find out where it is and I will put it all in the description for you. It's one of a few sports tennis documentaries coming out soon. I know we have the Roger Federer documentary, which is coming out in June. And also there's the Serena 8-part series coming to Max soon. So this is a really great start and a great addition. It is about the history of the shoe and how it became a part of sort of our fashion culture. But mostly it's a documentary about the man, Stan Smith. And a lot of people know the shoe, but I think very few people know the man. And after watching this documentary, you definitely get to know who the man, Stan Smith, is. It goes through his whole history of when he started playing tennis and his days as a member of the U.S. Davis Cup team, his relationship with Arthur Ashe through that period, his Wimbledon title run, and especially the boycott in 1973, which was the beginning of, I think, the importance and the power of the ATP. It was a very interesting documentary. There's a lot of history that I didn't know about, and I was really happy to find out. It also goes in depth into his relationship with Arthur Ashe and what that was like, and Arthur Ashe's contribution to the world of tennis. So it was really great, and just learning about the man Stan Smith it gave me even more appreciation for the shoe. I've always loved Stan Smiths. I always have a pair going. I tend to wear it down to the bone like I do all of my shoes, but I go for the classics. I talk about that a little bit in the interview, and I've always just gone for the classics, and it's always been part of my wardrobe. So adding that additional knowledge of who the man behind the shoe is was very insightful, and it was very interesting. I really hope you enjoy the interview and check out the documentary because of it. It's really worth a watch. So without any ado, here is my interview with Danny Lee, the director of Who is Stan Smith, and the man himself, Stan Smith. Welcome, Danny Lee and Stan Smith, to the Ground Pass podcast. It is really great to have you on. Danny, what drew you to ask the question, who is Stan Smith?
What compelled me to ask the question, who is Stan Smith? I think, like many people, I have been drawn to the shoe and the name since my adolescence. It's always held this esteem, this prestige, and who doesn't love a good mystery?
Yeah.
And I grew up, learning to respect your icons and your elders that have sort of paved the way. And Stan, more than anyone, I feel like is deserving of that tribute. the project came about with LeBron James and Maverick Carter's company, Spring Hill. The company approached me to direct it, and I instantly said yes. It was sort of a no brainer, a non starter. And the minute I got to meet Stan, it became all too clear that the good fortune I had to actually be able to tell this story. And I think more than anything, over this course of making the film and releasing the film, I've really come to enjoy just getting to know Stan and his family.
Cool. And Stan, I mean, you, I guess, maybe in the sort of more popular world of tennis, you've been pretty much quiet. What drew you to finally tell your story in this form?
Well, when Spring Hill came to me and said they saw the book and they liked it and they thought that this would be a good topic to cover, and it's kind of a multifaceted with my playing career and the shoe and we did the book because I wanted to get a little bit of a historical perspective of the shoe because it's been around for a while and to tell that story. And so they thought that it might be good to tell the story in general. And then it got into my life and my family and that sort of thing as well. So it was a combination of different things. And I said, well, if they want to do it, let's go for it.
Yeah. Danny, did you have any relationship to the world of tennis before this at all? Did you watch tennis or play a little bit?
Well,
Yes, for sure.
he's an up and coming tennis star. So, I think that was probably what motivated him.
That's our running joke. I, I've been always I've loved tennis since a kid. I sort of grew up in the era of Michael Chang, Agassi, Sampras, and so that was like the '90s, especially when the cool tennis the shoes were coming out too as well. So I was always a observer. I took moderate lessons when I was a kid, but I sort of veered away and I got caught up in video games, other things like that. But it was the pandemic for me that was a turning point in which, you went to the park and you saw basketball nets tied up, and there were very few options to get your, exercise on it. There were long distance running. You could do like prison workouts off YouTube at home, and then tennis. And tennis was clearly the most attractive thing. I've been always talking about picking the racket back up. So prior to starting the film, I started taking lessons again, and I think I've been playing for about a year and a half prior to starting the film. So the synchronicity of the universe was perfect in this instance. And when in making the film, and we had our off days, Stan and I got to hit a little bit,
You got to
and
hit with Stan Smith.
I got to hit with Stan
Yeah,
Smith. I
Oh,
got to
come
play
on.
on. I got to play on some clay or some
yeah.
near his home. I got to play on his actual court at Sea Pines Resort. So, this was much more than a filmmaking journey. It was a life journey.
Oh,
Very,
that's
very
great. So that kind of brings me to the movie itself. And in our world today, I think sport influences culture and almost vice versa in the world of fashion. Stan, when you were sort of in the height of being on tour and playing, was that the same thing? Were your kits, the things you wore, your shoes, was that influenced by the sort of fashion of the day, or was it mostly just, tennis whites?
Yeah, I would say that that it was the very first leather tennis shoe ever used in tennis. They had started some in basketball and track and field and that sort of thing. But so when we wore canvas shoes, and so it was basically the coolest and the best shoe that you could wear, for tennis. It had more support, even though it's not considered high tech now. It was high tech then compared to the canvas, and so that was the difference. And so uh, obviously the canvas went the wayside, and we went to leather, and then it became an off court thing as well. But it started out as a performance thing, being the best performance shoe on the market at the time.
And Danny, was that sort of cultural influence something that you were thinking about when you were making this movie? The way sometimes sports can really influence the culture and the fashion of the day?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's part of what makes me what drew me into this, and just sort of in general as a filmmaker, I really appreciate the confluence of different cultures to, sort of create this alchemy, right? And Stan, you can argue that Stan and the shoe were very much at the forefront of this explosion in what we call today as streetwear,
Yeah.
right? You're talking about taking this shoe for non-athletic purposes just to walk around. And that was, we sort of referenced that in the film, but that was sort of revolutionary at the time. I mean, you're talking, the late 60s, 70s, when, in some societies, it is more common to wear hard bottoms and suits and things like that. And you start to see these more comfortable shoes on the street. So, yeah, that was part of what drew me in, but I think what really clinched it and what I really came to discover is the humanity in the story. That I think is what really got me excited to tell this story. The depth of emotion, the friendships, the marriage. That's what I think everyone coming to watch the film might be surprised by. You might be thinking it's a tennis film, and then you might be thinking it's a fashion film, but at the core of it, it's about how we all really have more in common. And the shoe, in this weird, ironic way, embodies that commonality. It hasn't changed much. It's simple. It's elegant. Anyone can tap into it. So many different types of cultures. You're talking from, academics to streetwear to hip hop to even punk rock kids like the Beastie Boys. So
Yeah.
such a universal.
No, it really is. And I love what you said there about, you think it's a tennis movie or a fashion movie, but I was so struck by Stan, your sort of life and the friendships that you had and the relationships. I think a lot of your story was all about the friendships that you had. And one of them produced for me one of the most fun lines of the movie that I thought. And someone in the movie said, "Shout out to Donald Dell." Because I think if we all had friends like Donald Dell, it would be such a happy place. But how did he influence, because him making this deal for you with the shoe kind of changed your life, and how is that friendship, and how is it possible you still don't have a contract?
Well, he was our Davis Cup captain. When I first played Davis Cup, it was one of my goals to play Davis Cup, represent the United States. And he was a captain then for 2 years, and then he became an agent. And Arthur Ashe and I were the first clients. And so he was not just an agent; he was a friend. I respected him as the captain of the team, and we actually several of us formed a little company, and he was part of it, and we kind of combined our prize money to a certain extent and did some investments. But he was the first tennis kind of tennis only sort of agent. In other words, Mark McCormick was the big agent at the time, and he started with golf with Nicklaus and Player and Palmer, and then he went into tennis as well and all sorts of other areas. But Donald was kind of strictly tennis, especially at the beginning. So that was a friendship we had, and I trusted him, and he trusted me. And relationships are the ultimate relationships is trust that you develop, and I didn't think it was changed my life. I thought it was going to be a 5-year deal, and who knows what would happen after that. But another 5 years took place, then a 10-year, then a 6 years, and so it renewed. And going back to the film, I've introduced it a few times, and at the end of it, I say, you're going to laugh a little, you're going to cry a little, you're going to reflect a little, you're going to wonder a little, but at the end of the film, I hope you leave with a smile.
Yeah, I did. I did. I left with a big smile. It was
Did
for
you
someone
cry?
who is, I did. I
Yeah.
went through all the emotions.
Well, that was Danny's intention, I think, to get some emotion in this whole thing, and I even cry myself when I see it. So
Yeah. One of the other friends that you that we got to see your relationship in the movie was Arthur Ashe, and um, representation in tennis was something that he fought for, and I think that you helped him a little bit with that. But what do you think about that today? I think with athletes, even like Serena and Francis Tiafoe, there's still barriers to entry for the sport of tennis. How do you think we can help improve that? Do you think that's something we can build on?
I was involved with the player development program for the USTA. That was in '86, and at that time, we had some good young players coming along. There's been more, involvement of diversity in the game since then, but it's still a difficult game to get into. It requires support from either groups or individuals. It requires coaching, traveling, equipment, and it's an international game, and so
Pretty expensive.
it's a big investment, yeah. So it's not
Yeah.
easy for anybody to get into it. And if you don't have the means, then you've got to have some sort of support line to get you, and it's a long term thing. You just don't say, okay, we're going to support you for a year, then you become a great player and you're on your own. So that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And so it's, we do have more kids involved at the, local levels in various sections of the United States. But again, it involves, playing tournaments, and then the better you get, the more you have to travel. And that's where the USTA can get involved with some of the international travel. And they have, and we have a decent number of players out there competing, but the international competition is stronger than ever.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Sort of picking up on that. So I have a co-host with my podcast, Nick Carter, and he sent me a couple of questions for you. And I see you're wearing a Duke kind of sweatshirt there,
Yeah.
always representing. But how does the increased success of players coming through college, because we have a lot of college players coming through now, as you did, make you feel like is that a big thing for you still?
Well, there's several paths. I'm wearing this Duke thing to support my son, who's the coach at Duke. He's been the coach for 14 years, and he's obviously invested in the college game, and we're seeing a lot of players now go that path. It's very good competition, and it's an unbelievable setup. You've got facilities, you got other players, you got coaches, you have fitness programs, you have psychologists, psychiatrists, and you have a lot of help. Besides, most importantly, you get an education, which is sometimes left out of the scenario sometimes. But that's the whole purpose, really, to be a student athlete. And I tell even good players in college, in high school, if 1% of the people that are great players in high school are going to be a pro. And I said, unless you can dominate the college game, you should go to college, and then after that you can turn pro. My son has two players that are two of the top players in the country, really, in the top 30 or 40, and they have not been able to dominate. And one is turning pro; he's a senior, and he lost in the first round of the NCAAs, which was he was devastated because he thought he might win the tournament. So there's a lot of competition out there in college to push you,
Yeah.
and plus you have a support system. Whereas you go out there on your own, or even if the USTA supports you, you've got two or three other players with a coach. It's tough to get all those elements that I just mentioned.
Another question came from Nick. He's a big tennis nerd, and your Wimbledon final in 1972 is one of the legendary matches for him. He asks, "Do you still think about that match? at all with Ilie Nastase, or only when you're asked?
Well, I think of that match, but usually when I think of that match, I think of the match the year before. I lost 6-4 in the fifth set to John Newcomb, and was at the verge of accomplishing one of my goals is to win Wimbledon. And so, uh, you know, I guess it reflects on what you can think about as a person. Think about the bad things or the good things, and be grateful for the good things, and not worry so much about the bad things that have taken place. And certainly the 72, it was 2 or 3 points difference, and I won the tournament. And the year before, I lose the tournament. So they go hand in hand. Then we boycotted in 73. I didn't get a chance to defend it. Then I got to the semis in 74 and had match point. And I was going to play Connors in the finals. And so that was another, moment that was in my career.
So you talk about, and this was such a great part of the movie that I actually didn't know about this, but you talk about the boycott in 1973, and just hearing about it, I think it's one of the most selfless things I've ever witnessed in sport before, because you were informed, you were world number one, you had every chance to defend that title, and you chose for the greater good to step back and support the players of this newly formed ATP. What I think now there are definitely a few players in our current time who are bringing up issues with the sport, and are trying to have a voice and maybe affect change in the sport. What would your advice be to them as someone who was right there in the forefront and gave up something, I think, really big for the better of everyone else?
Well, there's it's almost a caste system. You've got the top 5 or 6 guys that draw people to the tournaments. You got the next 20 that are also, possible winners of a tournament, a big tournament. Then you've got the rest of the ATP, the next 100, let's say, and then you got the next 500. So those ones are going to be coming up, down the road. So you've got about 3 or 4 different groups that have different aspirations and different opportunities and goals, and off court as well as on court. So I think the top guys have to really have a good perspective of the whole game and do what's best for the whole game. And that means that you have to have a way to do it, to come into the game, in the lower tournaments, to develop and become one of those top 100 players, and then the top 20, and then the top 5. And so that's the hard part when you're, an agent sometimes will influence you. They'll say, think of this opportunity. If you have 10 tournaments that only the best players play, you're going to make a ton of money. You're going to have a lot of endorsements, a lot of TV time, and don't worry about those other guys. But if you're in that situation, then the game's going to stagnate. I think you've got this premier level, but then the bottom level is not going to be developing as it needs to be. So we felt at that time that the players had to have a say in the game, and they didn't at the time, and the federations around the world were kind of controlling it. So there's a balance. I guess in life there's always a balance, and the top players are drawing the fans, and they should benefit from that, and prize money wise and recognition. But at the same time, they have to look for those guys below. And we had great players before me that really started the professional game in a different way, and we really started the ATP Tour the way it is today, the really foundation of it. But it's a balance, and the same thing's happening in golf. You have the top players. A guy like McIlroy did not go live, but he's going to do well. And how much more do you need to have? And if you can really affect the history of the game, then everyone's going to do well.
Yeah. Okay, just the last few questions, because I know we're running out of time. Really quick, Stan, do you still follow the tour? Do you still follow tennis and a lot of the American players too?
Yeah, I do. I've got an academy at Hilton Head with juniors, and then I also have a company called Stan Smith Events, and we help corporations entertain their clients around major events. Tennis, Olympics, rugby, golf. And so, and then I've been the president of the International Tennis Federation, Tennis Hall of Fame. So we are always looking for players. And so I'm very up to date with the pro game, both the men and the women, just because of that involvement. Plus, I love the game. And so, I'm following it closely, and I've got to know some of the guys like Federer, Nadal, and those guys, a little bit Djokovic. But it is fascinating to see what's happening and the opportunities, and the Saudi Arabians are affecting the world and in the world of sport uh, as well as other areas. So it'll be interesting to see what the players end up doing. This next year is a pivotal year, I think, in the game.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And this is for you and for Danny as well. But what are your, I mean, there are so many variations of the Stan Smith shoe, so many. It's hard to pick a favorite of your children, but which one's your favorite? What's your favorite colorway?
Favorite shoe, not child. Are you asking what's my
No,
favorite
favorite shoe.
child?
I can't.
Wow,
I would
that's a loaded
never.
question. I like the movement towards suede and colors, and but when all is said and done, I'm actually wearing these shoes right now. These are the classics. I don't know if you can see it or not, but
Yeah, I
uh,
can. Yeah.
that's that's the one that always comes back because it stayed there forever. It's been the foundation of the brand. But I love the different variations and designs. And one of the things that's happened is that different artists and designers have designed things on the shoe, just like a painter on a blank, uh, white painting, where they can do anything they want. And this is a blank white shoe that I've had some gifts from people who have designed special things, and two of them have been related to my interests in life. The Boys and Girls Club. The racket that I had my name on. The involvement with my university, USC, and then even my wife's university, and so they've captured even some quotes from my book have been written on the shoe. So those are a couple of pairs of my favorite shoes that have real significance because it relates to my life a little bit.
Yeah. Danny, do you have a favorite Stan Smith?
Yeah, I'd say hands down the classic. How can you go wrong?
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong
No,
with the classic.
no.
Every time, because I've been wearing Stan Smiths forever, and I wear them down to the bone. And every time it's time to get a new pair, I always flirt with, oh, maybe I'll get a suede or maybe I'll get something else. And you go back to the classic. Can't help it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that seems to take place, but it is fun to try some different ones, and there have been there's some great collaborations. Like I just have some now with Bape. I don't know if you know Bape, but Bape is Bathing Apes, and that's a Japanese clothing company for trendy young people.
Oh,
And so Adidas has collaborated with Bape, and so one is a kind of a camo heel, and then that one is totally camo with white in the heel. So it's some of these collaborations are kind of fun, and they usually are short-lived, collaborations, but they're fun.
Stan, where I need some babes.
I know.
I need.
The Bapes are pretty neat. I even have some Bape golf shoes. I'm
Who do I talk to, Stan? Do you know anyone? Who do I talk to?
well. I'll talk to my agent, see what he can do. No.
Okay.
Paging Donald Dell. Paging Donald Dell.
Yeah.
um, okay, final question here, and this might be a toughie, or maybe it's easy to say because I mean, here you are, you have your book, you have the documentary, but Stan, how would you like people to remember you?
Uh, I think that hopefully I can be remembered as doing something for humanity that might have helped a little bit. One of the kind of aspirations of the shoe is that it's such a it's the commonality of it. You know, people all over the world can wear it. It's not that expensive, and hopefully it's one common thing that everybody can participate in. So that's a kind of a dream aspiration from the shoe, and so hopefully it'll leave the place a little bit better shape than it was before. But everybody can do their own part. I mean, it's only each person has an opportunity to do something to help other people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was really great having you on the podcast, Ground Pass, and good luck on the movie. And let us know where we could send our addresses for those Bape shoes, because that would be great.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in and listening to this bonus episode of the Ground Pass podcast. I have really enjoyed bringing these bonus episodes to you. We had the Challenger review and now this review of Stan Smith's documentary. And we hope to bring you more in the future. It really helps the podcast and being able to bring you these interviews. If you like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, leave a comment, do all the things that you know to do. If you're enjoying what we're doing, please leave us a note. Let us know what you like in particular. Let us know what you want to see more of. And follow us on social media. All the links in the description. See you soon on a regular episode. Bye.